Warning: the following podcast contains irreverent humor, exceptionally nerdy opinions, potential cursing, and plenty of love for the prequels. If any of the preceding offends you, please turn off this podcast immediately, and may the Force be with you.
Why, you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf-herder!
You can't use that word! Only we can use that word!
We'll use the Force. That's not how the Force works.
You're tuned in to the Nerfherder Council, your source for Star Wars opinion, conversation, and debate, featuring your hosts, JT. I mean, they killed his mother. What's he supposed to do? Send him a postcard? I wish you wouldn't have done that. AJ.
Well, I saw the merchandise at Kohl's, and I thought, maybe I should look into this.
Steve.
It's our goal to be played over the loudspeakers in the bathrooms during celebration.
On this episode of the Nerfherder Council, the Prequels Strike Back is the name of a new documentary releasing digitally this week. We talked to its creators.
This is the Nerfherder Council.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Nerfherder Council. I am your host, JT. With me, as always, is AJ and... Steve is not here. No, we are Steveless. We are Steveless for this show. He's off on daddy duty. So it's just AJ and I for this one, which actually is probably somewhat appropriate, considering this is an interview show. And it is our second interview. And the first time we had an interview, you guys were JT-less.
Yeah, I wonder if we're ever going to get all three of us together for an interview. It doesn't seem to happen that way.
It'll probably be the fourth one, because the third one now has to be just me and Steve.
Right, I'll just bow out.
Yeah.
The next one I'll be like perfectly ready and available, but I'll just do something else instead.
Yeah, right. We had the you and Steve one, the me and you one, then we'll have the me and Steve one, and then it's okay, we're back on all three of us.
Our next interview, you guys are recording. I'm like at the batting cages or something.
Yeah, right, playing putt-putt.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is
a swirly cone.
Very nice. Swirly cones are delicious. But anyways, this is a little bit different of a show for us. Again, it is based around an interview. There is a new documentary coming out digitally on September 14th called The Prequels Strike Back. And I, in a moment of inspiration, decided to tweet the director and ask if we could have him on the show. And he was gracious enough to accept our interview request. So this show is based around an interview that we've done with director Brad Weatherholt and producer Kyle Brodeur of, again, the film The Prequel Strike Back. And at first glance, it appears to be a film that is in defense of the prequels. And that's why I was immediately drawn to it. And AJ, I give you credit because you're the one that private messaged Steve and I with the trailer. And I immediately went, oh, cool. This is going to be someone saying why the prequels are awesome.
Yeah, I didn't even mean to use it for the show. I just thought it was something that you, as a prequel lover, would really enjoy watching.
Yeah. But then as I watched the trailer, it became apparent that it wasn't a love fest directed at the prequels. And it was really intelligent in that there were people in the trailer, and again, it's just a minute and a half, but it really gives a good cross-section of the movie, as we will find out, that it's people who don't like the prequels. It's people that do like the prequels. And what it does is it presents a different way of looking at the prequels. So even if you don't like the prequels, it's something that might change your opinion on them.
Well, the bit that I really like about it is it's not specific. It's called The Prequels Strike Back. And I think that title is actually very telling because it references a movie from the original trilogy in its title and also the prequels at the same time. Because really the emphasis of the whole film seems to be how to incorporate the prequels into the larger understanding of the Star Wars saga rather than just talking about why the prequels are better than people think they are.
Yeah, exactly. And so, again, I hit Brad up. He's the director, and he accepted our interview request, and he brought his producer Kyle on, and we proceed to have about a 45-minute interview with them about the movie. And AJ, I really think this was an absolutely fantastic interview because basically the film is aimed at giving you, as I said, a different outlook on the prequels. And in talking to them, it really made us have a different outlook on Star Wars as a whole. And so whatever they were going for with the movie, I think kind of, their aim got across to us during the interview itself.
Yeah, having not even seen the film yet, I already know from talking to them, I want to go back and watch the prequels again with the information and the perspective that they're trying to impart through their film and see if I can pick up on the bits that I missed in the past.
Yeah. There was so much stuff and we, like I say, we had 45 minutes with them, that we recorded. We went a little over our allotted time and they were very gracious and they, didn't cut us off, which was cool. Mm-hmm. But it was funny because as we were talking, AJ and I were looking at each other and writing notes and stuff, and we could have talked to them for hours and hours. They have incredible perspective on the Star Wars films. They're fans of the movies. I wouldn't say they're fanboys like we are, but they still love Star Wars.
They're fanboys, but just for different reasons. Like we're fanboys as average moviegoers. They're fanboys as fans of cinema, so they can look at it from a more critical standpoint, whereas we look at it just from a storytelling standpoint.
Yeah, that's an excellent way of putting it. It was so many things that they said I wanted to ask questions about and delve deeper into, but because we had to keep it a little bit geared towards the film they're putting out, I didn't. But if I had the time, they are so well versed in the history of Star Wars, the story of Star Wars, and the subtle nuances that a lot of people might not necessarily even notice unless you're really delving into it the way they do. I mean, they're film historians, really, in a lot of ways. So it was a really cool way to look at the movies. And for that reason, I thought it was a great interview, and it was a blast talking to them about it. It was really, really educational.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we've played it up enough. I think it's about time we just get to the interview already.
I agree. So here it is. This is director Bradley Weatherholt and producer Kyle Brodeur of the upcoming documentary, The Prequels Strike Back. It is released digitally on September 14th. If you are in the Austin, Texas area, October 6th, they will have a cinematic release, and they are working on, as we will find out, a few other areas of the country where there may be screenings. But here it is. Our interview with the guys who made the Prequels Strike Back. Hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody on the line with us right now, we have a couple of special guests. We have the makers of a new Star Wars documentary that will be released digitally on September 14th, and the theatrical premiere will be on October 6th in Austin, Texas. It's called The Prequels Strike Back. And we have the director, Brad Weatherholt, and one of the producers, Kyle Brodeur, on the phone with us right now. How you guys doing?
Hey, we're great. Thanks for having us.
No problem. Thanks again for making time for us. I really appreciate it. I know you guys have a busy press schedule for this thing. I was doing some research on it, and there's interviews all over the place that I found, so I know you guys have been doing a lot. So your time is appreciated. So I know that, starting out, your company is the Ministry of Cinema. Can you give us a little background on the Ministry of Cinema and what you guys did?
All right, yeah. So we've been active for since 2012, 2013. I've been making kind of just short, independent films, kind of with a group of friends. Started off with mainly just us in college. Kind of fed up with the program that we were in. We had some great professors, but not really a lot of equipment, not really a lot of time. So we're like, well, let's just make a group with people who love the same things that we do and want to make something, So we've been, kind of on our own doing this. And then Brad had, this idea about a year ago after reading Mike Climo's stuff, after many of, prequels and OT, are the best kind of type of conversations among ourselves. And then, we just said, well, let's do our first documentary. I mean, we've done shorts and a couple of educational series because we like, teaching people about movies. So why not make a feature about Star Wars and, impart some movie knowledge on some people.
Right. Now, this didn't start out as a feature, though, right? Because you guys did was it IndieGoGo? And you initially set your goal, if I saw right, at $3,500, but it ended up you got close to $13,000. So it kind of went through stages.
Yeah, it sure did. So, I mean, it's kind of crazy because, when we started out the fundraising, I don't think anyone just starts fundraising for a project and it's like, okay, we're going to get, $10,000, $20,000. At least we didn't.
Right.
So we have a history of stretching a dollar. We can make projects. We don't have any choice. I say it like we have a choice. Like we right. In order for us to make our shorts with $5, we have to do what we have to do. So we knew that we could make a feature for pretty cheap. And I think what was our first goal was like $3,500, and it would be a short, and then it was
short, and
yeah,
possibility of doing like another 2 sections or something like that we planned on maybe to eventually make it something larger, but it started off like a 30-minute little mini feature type of thing.
Yeah, and a short in the sense of like something that would play at a festival or something like that. But then it was doing so well, and ultimately the goal was to have a feature. So if it was going to be just a short, it would be probably just about, I don't know, ring composition and maybe a few other things. But very early on, we knew that there was just so much going on that it would be deep enough for an entire feature. So as the things progressed and as we kept, getting fundraising, it was pretty exciting. We hit the 10K stretch goal, and I think I don't know, that was pretty big. I remember that day.
Yeah, that was a good day.
Yeah, I went on there today because I was like, man, we should donate to this, but it was closed, and I saw it was at, like I said, it was like $12,700 or something like that. I was like, wow, that's a lot more than the initial 35. So
yeah,
so that
went
was
a long way.
I know, we should have asked for $10 million.
Right? Yeah, we fell short at 2.5. So, well, getting into the movie itself, I know that the basis of this really is Mike Klimo's. What is it called? It's the ring theory, or what's the official?
It's like
the ring theory, right?
Star Wars something.
It's very. Yeah, can you guys explain that in a nutshell? Because it's very involved. I mean, I looked it up today, and it's a lot of internet pages to go through. So can you synopsize that for people?
Yeah. So it's Mike Klimo's his Klimo like Slimo. That's how he said it to me. He started off calling it ring theory, which is something he now doesn't like, and I agree with him for, because it does, like, theory kind of has like a, I don't know, like we didn't land on the moon kind of sense to it. And really what he's doing is more of like critical theory or like critical analysis of film.
Okay.
Like something that you'd more something you would read in a film journal than anything else. And so what I like to call it now is ring composition. And basically what ring composition is it's an ancient literary technique. That's been used like in the Bible. It's used like Homer had it. A lot of epic poetry, like Chinese, the annals or annals. I don't know how to pronounce it, but the old Chinese like dialects. Mm-hmm. A lot of epic ancient texts have this pattern. So in most epic poetry, you have to. A lot of people don't realize or remember that, at Homer's time, before Homer, these epics were recited. So people would speak these. And it was only until later when you had, sophisticated enough papyrus and an educated class to write it down that, that we actually have these texts. But they were actually spoken way before. And how you can imagine speaking an entire book of the Odyssey. there's like 12 books. Imagine speaking a 12th of the Odyssey in a sitting.
Right.
How do you remember that? Well, they would have rhythmic patterns. And some of those patterns would be just like basic parallelism, like ABC, ABC.
Mm-hmm.
And then some were called ring composition or inverted parallelism, which is ABC, CBA. And what Mike did was take that pattern, and sometimes it's very sophisticated from a plot level. So like in the Odyssey, maybe books 1 through 3 relate to books 12, 11, and 10 in an inverted manner. Or maybe it's just very simple, like these 3 lines of poetry relate to these 3 lines of poetry. But he took that and then used it as kind of a paradigm for taking a look at the Star Wars saga. And when he did that, he found all of these connections between the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. And it's pretty crazy once you dig into it. And basically, I guess the gist of how it relates to Star Wars is the prequel trilogy is a tale of descending, both literally and that we see characters descending constantly, and visually, of course, as well. But then narratively, obviously, it is the story, it's the fall of Anakin Skywalker, whereas the original trilogy is ascending, where, it's the rise of Luke Skywalker and the Skywalker family and atonement of Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. So what's cool is, like, on a plot level, seeing how they relate to one another. But then also, I think what kind of blows a lot of people's minds is the whole visual relationship. And you'll see, certain scenes, certain shots from 1, 2, and 3, and how they are basically mirrors of shots from 4, 5, and 6. So it's good stuff. It's good stuff. I mean, it is a deep dive, and that's why, it's like 10 pages or something like that. And that's not for everyone to just kind of pick up. And that's why we knew when we saw it, like, oh, this is something that needs a visual companion through video. And that's I think was kind of the springboard to it initially.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually something I was going to ask, was if there was one particular part of that actually inspired the making of an entire documentary about it, but that answers the question. In your guys' opinion, do you think that was something that was a conscious effort on George Lucas's part, or is that just kind of an accidental, it just happened to work out that way?
Kyle, what do you think? And then I'll say what I think.
Yeah, I think that's something that you can look at either way. I mean, there is plenty of things that consciously that you're going to be like, well, I remember I made these things. This is about the tale of father and son. Let's see about including this that makes sense. But then there is those parts where you kind of just do it automatically, that you do not know that you've done it, and it's still done anyway. So I think, you can just say 50% of it maybe was consciously done, but 50% of it's just by existing in that universe and creating that universe, and it's just going to happen. So, I mean, it can go either way. That's how I kind of look at it. I don't think it has to be George intended this, that's why they're good, or he didn't know what he was doing, he just kind of let it happen. He doesn't know what he's doing. So it's kind of a mix of both.
Right.
To kind of get everything going.
Yeah, and I think there's kind of like my nice guy response to this, and then kind of like the prudish, I guess, asshole response. But I guess the nice guy response would be probably kind of what Kyle said, in that I don't think like George Lucas had the Odyssey open when he was making Star Wars or something like that. I think George Lucas loves epic poetry and is well versed in it, and through the creative process, it just manifested itself, much in the way that it manifested itself with someone like John Williams, who loves Wagner and loves opera music and uses the same exact things that you would see in the Ring cycle. in his music. Do I think they were coming together and be like, look, this is going to be, no, I mean, I don't know. I don't necessarily think so. But then I guess the second response, and it's kind of a prudish one, but I think it's an important one, is that if you know, when you look at art, or if you look at films, or you look at any media critically, there are certain critical theories, but ever since the 50s, there was a Frenchman, Roland Barthes, who essentially posited like the death of the author. And that is to say, like, what an author intends for a work isn't necessarily the most important thing. It's what an audience can read out of it. So if we as an audience can read the Ring Cycle, which is pretty, I mean, there is definitely a viewing of the film that is a ring composition viewing of the film. I mean, you're not grasping at straws. And so if we as an audience can infer meaning from that, then that's something that's important. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, I don't think he did it like completely on purpose. And then I don't think it cares. I don't think it matters either, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of get where you're coming from. I mean, I've done some artistic stuff myself. You guys are filmmakers. You never know. Sometimes you have these ideas, and sometimes it's an unconscious influence just by passively absorbing other people's work. And sometimes it's a conscious decision where you might frame something a certain way because you remember a specific scene somewhere that you want to emulate.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, completely. I think a lot of Lucas's genius is unconscious. And matter of fact, a lot of the faults that you might find in the films are usually conscious faults on Lucas's parts, like things that he consciously may have argued for and stuff like that. And a lot of the genius, I would argue, of Lucas is what you just described. Is his ability to have read Joseph Campbell and all of the great mythologists, and also all of the psychology of Jung, and it just have this rich understanding of the world and have multiple world views, and then go make a film. And so I think it's not. I don't think he was one-to-one trying to make these connections with things. I think he just knew all of those things and then made a film, and it manifested itself because he was aware of it.
Right. Back on the actual making of your movie. Now, we touched on the IndieGoGo campaign. Did you guys start out, were you basically adding on things that you were filming as the dollar amount was going up, or did you film everything and just hope you got enough money to actually put the whole thing out?
I don't really remember. Do you, Kyle?
Well, I mean, it was like, okay, we had a $3,500 goal. We had pretty much two plans. Here's what we're going to do if we make a short. Here's what we're going to do if we make an hour and 20. Once it got to like about $7,500, we were like, we're making a feature. I mean, even if we don't get enough money through the campaign, we're going to find a way to stretch all of this as far as we can go. We're going to see if we can do anything. We already planned on, selling our red, which we did have to do to end up wrapping up this movie. And, and so we're like, we're going to do it. And then that's where we had these kind of two plans. And once it got to like about 7,500, we're like, nope, we're doing the feature. This is going to be the way it is. And then Brad started drawing up this master outline of everyone we can talk to, research everything. And we kind of just said, well, we have this much money. How many people can we interview? And let's go from there.
Yeah, there's like kind of different philosophies with documentary filmmaking. Like some people are you plant a seed and then you water it and then you just let it kind of happen. And we had a little bit of that, but a lot of it was master planned at the very beginning, or at least there. Yeah, I mean, there was an outline, and then when we would go do the interviews, like they were deliberately positioned so that we would get. And I mean, we'd let them say it, of course, but I was trying to get certain ideas across so that then they could cut together. And it didn't always work, and some things, didn't get to come to life as much as I would have wanted them. But I think a lot of it did. So that was fun. But and that was a large in part from Mike. So we had filmed all across the country, and then at the end I was like, oh my gosh, I have this outline, and it's like 8 pages, and if it was written in green, that means good, we got it from people. Like, people had said these ideas. And if it was written in red, then that was bad. We hadn't gotten it. And I remember we got to Mike, and he was the very last one, and he was kind of like the cleanup batter. And we were like 3.5 pages that were red. And I was like, Mike, this is going to be a really long interview because we're going to be talking about so many things. But he did. I mean, that guy is he's an encyclopedia.
Right. So now, obviously, the digital release is September 14th. I actually have that in my on my calendar as soon as my brother sent me the trailer to the movie, because admittedly I'm a huge prequel fan. On our show, I'm a massive defender of the prequels. I love them. And now you have a theatrical release on October 6th there in Austin. Is there a plan to release that theatrically anywhere else?
Good question.
Yeah.
So, Kyle, take this.
Got it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would just say that we're like a 3-man group at this point. So there's at different stages of production, there's been more people involved with the project and not. And at this point, there's about 3 people who are involved with the project every day. And so planning the release in just Austin alone is a lot. But the good thing is we have had a lot of interest in New York, LA, Dallas has reached out to us. And then more venues in Austin. So I wouldn't be surprised if we did spread out to more premieres or to more showings. But I don't know. It is kind of tough, for us at this point. And it's the premiere that we're having in October is more like a celebration than anything else, I would say. Right, Kyle? I mean, it's more... Yeah, it's more celebrating the film and celebrating Austin's film community, because it's a lot of blood and sweat going into it.
Right.
Definitely.
Nice. Now, where do you stand on the prequels themselves now? Because I know in reading up on it, Brad, you had said that you were, as a kid, you experienced the prequels in the theater, and you enjoyed them, and then as you got older, you kind of jumped on board with the internet hate and everybody dogging the prequels and too much CG and stuff like that. And then the ring theory kind of changed your mind back. It brought you back to an enjoyment of the movie. So where do you both stand in terms of your beliefs on the prequels right now?
Yeah. So, okay. So, I mean, it is like, I did start off as a kid, and I just didn't really discriminate. Star Wars was Star Wars. I liked them all. And then, I think I remember it was like I was watching Adam Films. I don't know if you guys remember this. This was back in the day, but AdamFilms.com, they had Star Wars contests, like Star Wars film contests. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was like 11 or 12 or something, and I was watching a contest, and they started just like one of the films that won was just bashing on Jar Jar and bashing on Phantom Menace. And I remember that day because it was like the first time I realized that there was a community of people that hated the Phantom Menace, because all my friends and everyone I had dealt with thought it was just a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
And I remember that day happening, and then slowly, I mean, we know what happened after that.
Yeah.
We know what's become of the prequels and their reputation. But as that happened, I guess I just dismissed them, and I didn't really have interest in Star Wars for a long period of time. We started, we got into different movies, and I just kind of thought, I mean, I always liked the original trilogy, but then the prequels, I wasn't like ever on forum boards like these suck or something, so I never hated them or anything like that. I just kind of thought, I just didn't think about them, to be honest.
Right.
Maybe I just didn't want to. But then when I had read Climo's stuff, I still wasn't like, oh, I think the prequels are great or something like that. But I started, for the first time, I became interested in them. I was like, holy cow, these are interesting, and there's more stuff going on. And then when I reached out to Mike, and Mike started to explain a lot of the stuff that is now in the documentary, not about ring composition, but just different aspects of the Star Wars prequels and George Lucas' history and how these things relate to Star Wars, the saga. Then that's when really the conversion started to happen. And so when people say, do you like the prequels? I guess my response would be like, I like Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And I don't really see... I think if you do it on an individual film basis, I think most rational people... Or I don't want to say rational, because then that will assume that someone who doesn't say this is irrational. So
right.
Scratch that.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Most people, and there's very legitimate arguments to argue this, would say like Empire is the best, then probably New Hope, and we know how the six get ranked. Yeah. And I would probably agree with that. But I think Star Wars is so much better when viewed as a whole and not just the sum of its parts. And so, yeah, I mean, you can really like Empire because it's a great film. But I promise you, if you understand the prequels more, you're going to like Empire even more. And so I think for people who have completely shut out the prequels, I don't think the film necessarily begs them to like them, because I don't think that's a winning strategy. But I do think it asks them to consider them as a collective, and then also try to take the pieces that that will enrich the films that are your favorites, because Star Wars is a saga, and if you are very selective on it, I think that ultimately is going to shut doors for you. But I don't know. I mean, the film ends pretty. It's a loose ending. I don't think there's a conclusion necessarily met, and I think that's just how it should be. I think your opinion of Star Wars should always be changing, because the information that comes with Star Wars is always changing. And now we're having new Star Wars films and new Star Wars TV shows, and it just doesn't, I don't know. I hope that people reconsider the prequels, and I hope that people who love the prequels and who have always loved the prequels see the film as a celebration of the prequels. So it's a tightrope. Right. What the film is trying to do is a tightrope, but hopefully tonally we've captured a little bit of that. Yeah. What would you say, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, for my stance on the prequels, I mean, honestly, I don't care. I mean, Star Wars is Star Wars. I remember watching the originals with my dad on VHS. I remember going and seeing them in theaters. I didn't really have all the toys or anything like that. I just remember watching the movies and seeing like, wow, we're in space. We have ships. We have all this stuff going. This was fun. And then kind of the same thing is like, I grew up, internet came around, other people started learning kind of the same, quote unquote truths of the prequels. And I kind of went the same way. Whatever. I don't want to watch these. Original is better. I think that's the thing. But then, yeah, it's not necessarily the ring theory opened my eyes or anything like that. It's not some, oh man, this is great. Let's change our worldview in one night type of thing. It's like, well, if this one guy can improve, use critical theory to see something new in the movies, why can't I see that too? Why can't I be open to accepting all of the movies, finding what I like, accepting that they're all part of one universe? They're not two separate galaxies far, far away. It's one galaxy a long time far, far away. Right. So that's kind of how I feel. And a lot of people think that this movie's, this is a combative response, directly opposite direction of Red Letter Media or the Plinkett reviews or People versus George Lucas. I mean, it's not. I mean, we don't even reference those guys in our film. We don't care. Right. I mean, their opinion is valid because they have the ability to make an opinion, and so do we. And we just think that it's, we want to lay out as much information as we can that we think is interesting on the saga that we thought was just like people need to know, and then allow you to make your own decision from there. If you want to keep up with the versus debate, or if you just want to, just like Star Wars and let everybody else who likes, one better than the other, just let them like Star Wars too.
Right.
How we feel.
Now, when you guys were doing your research for the movie, my theory on the prequels and Star Wars in general is that I think that part of the reason that people hate on the prequels so much is that a lot of people went into them with expectations of just seeing a continuation of 4, 5, and 6, when at that point, you know, it was 16 years removed from Return of the Jedi, and they had been built up as so legendary in everybody's mind that there's no way that movie was going to live up to the expectations. I mean, it could not possibly be as good as everybody was hoping it would be. When you guys were interviewing people, did you find that was kind of a prevalent outlook? I mean, when you were interviewing people, did they kind of say that well, I was used to 4, 5, and 6, and I didn't get that?
Yeah, Chris. I mean, we have the Chris section. Chris
section, the Brian section. I mean, the people who have very clear opinions on why they dislike them, we let them talk. So it's really nice to see that on there. So like Chris,
and I think most of those people, it's context, and it's like what you said is Chris Gore was, you know, part of People versus George Lucas. He was a outspoken critic of the prequels for a long time, and we actually got a lot of flack for welcoming him to the project and embracing him the way we did. But I think it's come around, and people start to understand why we did. And Chris really did an excellent job of explaining the atmosphere at the time. As a matter of fact, he's the one who opens the trailer with all the context, and let's just pretend that, you know, whatever the prequels, whatever you think of them, imagine a scenario where a film comes up with that much hype and it does well, that it succeeds. And try in your mind to make that movie. Try in your mind to make the movie that satisfies people intellectually, so satisfies critics. It satisfies new fans. It satisfies the older fans, and it's not a rehash, and it tells a new story. And it was kind of a thought experiment, and we would do that with people, you know, and everybody's film was different, and it's just not a possible scenario. So that on top of, you know, whatever else was going on with the prequels kind of made this perfect storm. A lot of people, you know, or I guess we do remember that it was just an unprecedented thing. You know, now prequels, sequels, whatever, everything gets a prequel. But at that time, just imagine. I mean, we're all Star Wars fans. We remember. Right. I mean, just go back to that time of holy cow, this is returning. The return. Yep. It was just this huge thing. You know, LeBron is coming back to Cleveland. Like, it's just this has never happened before. And just, I mean, I think we try and take people back to that time. And hopefully returning will help them move forward, because I don't think a lot of people have moved on. Right.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing. I mean, my outlook has always been, you know, I didn't go into it with expectations. I just wanted to see a cool Star Wars story. And, you know, I first saw episode 4 and 5 in 1980 when I was 4 years old. You know, they put out episode 4 right before episode 5 came out. So as a little kid, first seeing stormtroopers and Darth Vader, it blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. So, and in 1999, when I saw Phantom Menace, I was like, oh, cool, man. There's lightsabers. Here comes Darth Maul with the double-ended saber. It was kind of that experience all over again when I was 23. You know, the same thing I had when I was 4. So, now, with the documentary, I know that you, obviously, in the trailer, you guys got Kevin Smith, which is obviously a monstrous get. Who else do you guys have in there that people might actually know that would help kind of promote, you know, the scope of the film?
Kevin's the big one.
Yeah. Definitely Mike.
Mike has a big presence now.
Chris Gore.
Berardinelli from the film critic from Real Views. Chris Gore, naturally. Oh my gosh, I forget his the guy who did the What If Star Wars prequels were good.
Yeah.
Oh, Michael Barrett.
Belated Media, Michael Barrett.
Yeah.
Him. I would have gotten Mike Stacklasa from Red Letter I reached out to him quite a few times and he never responded. I hope he regrets that, in the sense that I hope he sees the film and realizes he would have been able to speak and not it wouldn't have been like a slanted argument against him or anything. But yeah, I mean, we have a bunch of different voices in the film, and I think they're curated in a way to have like a really civil discussion about the prequels. But then it is pretty slanted towards like film critique. So we do have like Dr. Ann Lancashire. We do have Dr. Joseph Campbell of the. Dr. Joseph Campbell. Geez, he's dead.
I was going to say, wow, that's a hell of a get.
We have Dr. Jonathan Young of the Joseph Campbell Institution.
Right.
And
Stephen Gallipo.
Stephen Gallipo. He was a Jungian analyst. It is this weird hodgepodge of fanboys and philosophers, and I think it. Hopefully, the audience takes it and kind of gets the quirky tone, but it definitely slants. It skews towards more of like the critical community than it does the I don't like pink lightsabers community.
Who's got time to just say, man, I don't like that. This happens. There's not much.
We've seen that before.
You go look at our trailer comments now. I mean, that's what that is. Well, I mean, it proves the point that we make in the first 10 minutes of the movie.
So.
Yeah. It definitely. I still like I say, I'm a huge fan of the prequels, and I can't believe the hate that comes off it. I mean, because there's so much that you miss, that, like you said before, Brad, about you have to look at Star Wars as a whole, and it's really an incredible story. Because I mean, I think people, when you're watching the original trilogy, you look at Darth Vader and like, okay, where did he come from? And when you find out they're going to tell that story, that's a cool story. Mm-hmm. How did the Empire get to be the Empire? Things like that are interesting. But I know you guys are short on time, so AJ has one more question, then we got a real short one, and we'll let you guys get moving.
Well, there seem to be two prevalent audiences when it comes to the prequel, as far as prequel haters go. There's people that just plain hate them because that's the popular opinion, and it's not 4, 5, and 6 like they were expecting. And then there's the people that just choose to ignore them entirely because they don't want their 4, 5, and 6 sullied with all that other stuff. Now, the ring theory thing is really interesting, and it gives a new perspective on those 3 movies. But it is kind of like a higher level of thinking than most movie-going audiences tend to go for, especially Star Wars being like a big action blockbuster, summer tentpole kind of film. Do you think that if that was even the case with George Lucas trying to do this whole ring theory process, subconsciously or not, do you think, putting on your directorial hats for a moment, if you were in his shoes, do you think maybe he was speaking over the heads of his audience in doing so?
Oh, without a doubt. And that's Star Wars episode. That's Star Wars, the first Star Wars to come out. Star Wars was always this amalgamation of childish crap, like kiddie stuff, and then really high-level things. So it's Flash Gordon meets Joseph Campbell. And it's always been a very strange hodgepodge of camp and actual fairly highbrow stuff. So yeah, I think George Lucas thinks of himself as a toy maker, as a children's film director. So I don't think talking over implies condescension. So I don't think he was ever condescending to his audience, and I think he wanted the films to serve, like you said, to work with 2 different audiences. So serve as a introduction for children to pick up these ideas, but then also serve as a refresher of those ideas for a more sophisticated audience as well. So yeah, that's George Lucas, and he sometimes the mix works and sometimes it doesn't, and that's filmmaking, that's art, and that's artistry, and that's I'm much more forgiving to a filmmaker who is willing to try something different than I don't want to be on the side of like bashing other movies, but like if you watch just a normal Marvel film or something like that, there is not shit for subtext. I'm sorry, I don't know if we can curse on this, but there's nothing for subtext. I mean, there's no substance going on, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Well, I would say it's a bad thing, but I'm okay with audiences enjoying that. But I'm much more willing to give a film that is trying to be something more than just that a chance.
Right. That leads into my last question, actually. What did you guys think of episode 7?
What do you think, Kyle?
I mean, it felt like Star Wars to me. I had fun with it. I don't really have a need to critique it or go over. I kind of just, I like to watch the movies. I think they're fun. I was nicing the original characters back. I thought that was amazing. I was like, okay, that's different. We haven't seen them. We didn't see them in the last 3 because that's impossible. And,
right.
And it's like, okay, this is cool. We get to see something old but new again, whatever. And we get to see, the beginnings of the new universe. I mean, I feel like it's a great opening step to what they're trying to do. And it's like, like Brad just said, why not give it a shot? I mean, if Disney has all this money to let the franchise grow, let's just let it happen and see if we can get some good stories out of it. And I enjoyed 7. I think it was a great introductory to just getting us back into Star Wars. I didn't really find anything wrong with it.
Cool.
Yeah, I think with 7, what Star Wars became, so it's still a saga, but now it's a serial. And Lucas's original vision for the films were a serial, like in Flash Gordon, where it never ends. It's just episode after episode after episode. It's never ending. And he didn't direct this, the second one, episode 5. He didn't direct the third one. And I think that was, he never had a problem with someone else directing. He just always kind of wanted to be the custodian for it because it was going to be like this big, long, massive serial.
Yeah.
And it changed and it became different things. And I think with episode 7, it became a serial. And I'm still interested in the Star Wars serial as a fan. And I really liked episode 7. I liked it like almost in the sense that I like riding the Hogwarts ride at Orlando Studios.
Right.
There's a lot of craftsmanship and it's like a ride. But I'm not as interested in it as I am maybe like the 6 films, the completion, the totality of the first 6, because it's discrete, it's closed off, and now we can discuss and make, kind of explore those, and maybe I'll get more interested, but I don't know. So yeah, thumbs up for 7. Thumbs up for the first 6 too.
Right. Yeah. The reason AJ's giving me a look over here, like, why'd you ask that? And the reason I ask is because when you mention, you enjoy films that take a chance, I thought it was an interesting thing to get your opinion on it, because one of the prevalent criticisms of 7 is that, the second half of the movie kind of really follows episode 4 beat for beat. So I was wondering if you guys kind of subscribe to that, or,
I don't want to talk negative about the films, but I will say this: it took no chances at all, and there was no risk. And Disney treats its films like it does, its fans like its shareholders, and it's not. They're not. And this is a corporate thing. And I'm not saying this from like I can't believe Disney would do this. I completely understand why Disney would do this, because Disney has a lot of responsibilities to its shareholders. But if you're making a film that's a production film that is studio directed in all sense of the words, I mean, JJ is a studio director. It's going to cater to studio interest, and studio interests are going to just do what the fans want.
Make the movie and get it done.
Right? Yeah, make the movie that the fans want, because the fans are the ones who are going to pay for it, and to take the least amount of risk possible. And so there's an argument there that you say, well, that's a good thing. You need to make the movie that fans want, because this is for fans. And so that's why I don't want to necessarily sound so negative about it. But like I said, just a personal, I think it's much more noble to take the risk And so when you take a look at the prequels, which was a huge financial risk, I think there is a certain nobility, even if I don't think they were complete failures, but even if they were complete failures, to me, that's more interesting to look at now than to look at studio pictures that are just going to be made ad infinitum.
Yeah, I kind of look at it like I'm a huge Van Halen fan, and Eddie Van Halen always said about his music that he'd rather fail with his own music than have a hit with somebody else's. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the way I kind of view it. And I agree with you 100%, Brad, that I really love episode 7, but I prefer the prequels because even if people think they weren't good, George was trying to tell a new story, and that's what I went into episode 7 that I wanted, and I was kind of bummed out when it kind of followed it beat for beat, but I'm excited to see where it goes. So
yeah, it's a very different agenda. George Lucas is the ultimate independent filmmaker, whereas Disney is a studio and they have people to answer to.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how Star Wars evolves with a different set of goals in mind than telling the best story. They're still trying to tell the best story possible, but at the end of the day, they're doing it because they have a commercial interest, not because they have an artistic interest, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. I 100% agree with that.
Well, I know you guys got to go, so I'll combine these last two little bits to get the promo in. Number one, if you guys could have anything come across from your film, what do you want people to take out of it? And the second thing is, where can everyone get it on September 14th?
So I'll take the first half, Kyle. So I think what we want people to grab from it is there's different audiences, and it's like when the prequels were introduced, there were so many different audiences it had to cater to. So this is an impossible task to accomplish all these things for all these different people. But for people who love the prequels, hopefully they see it as a celebration. For people who hate the prequels, hopefully they see it as at least an introduction to consider different aspects of the prequels. I'm not asking you to completely have an about face or anything. And then for people, and I think this is a large majority of the fan community, who are on the fence or relatively indifferent, or who have maybe people who don't even care about Star Wars, who just like good movies. Hopefully the film provides certain insights and nuggets and revelations about the prequels and the entire Star Wars saga that makes them completely reconsider what not only the prequels were, but what the original trilogy was. So hopefully it's a launching pad for someone to see them and then understand George Lucas and those 6 films in a much more enriching way.
Awesome. And yes. Where can everybody get the film at September 14th?
Definitely. So, yeah, we're doing our digital release through VHX for rental and purchase, the same with YouTube and Amazon.com. You can go to prequelstrikeback.com/film, and it has all the different ways that you can find it there.
Awesome. Well, we definitely want to thank you guys for spending time with us. I know we went longer than you guys had, so thank you so much for sticking around and answering a few extra questions. I can tell you, beyond a shadow of a doubt, you've at least got one sale from me for sure, because I'm really looking forward to it. Being a prequel lover, and I like delving into Star Wars, so on a deeper level. So,
well, I'll be buying it too. Thank you.
Okay, so you have 2. There you go.
There's more guys like you.
Oh, there will be. There will be. We a bunch of our friends are into this, so yeah. Again, thanks, guys. Hopefully, we get to talk to you guys again in the future, and best of luck with the release, man. I hope it goes great for you. This is a fantastic idea, and I hope it really plays out well for you.
Hey, absolutely. We thoroughly enjoyed it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Appreciate
it, man. Appreciate you.
So that was our interview with Brad and Kyle from the Prequel Strike Back. That was absolutely fascinating to me, AJ. It was kind of a bummer because we were on a set time schedule. Mm-hmm. And so many things that he said, I could have just gone off on a tangent. That conversation could have been a couple hours, really.
Yeah. The number of things that he said, like we were talking about off air, there were so many opinions that we held ourselves that he echoed without any prompting whatsoever. You could tell that guy definitely at least has similar attitudes to us, if not is just straight up a pure fan the way we are.
Yeah. And he even said I don't think he is an enormous fanboy of Star Wars like we are. He loves it, but probably not on our level. But it's interesting that he had the same outlooks that we had, because for us, you know, we don't delve into the films on the level that they do. He's a cinephile.
That's what I thought was really cool, is he is just as big of a fan, but from a different perspective. He's a fan because he thinks that they're, from a cinematographic standpoint,
from
really,
a different point of view.
From a different point of view.
We need the soundboard.
Anyway. Certain point of view.
Ah, damn it.
But from a certain point of view, he likes them as films, not just because he's a fan of Star Wars and the story they tell. He's a fan of how the films were made and how they told the story.
Yeah. I think that's something that I took out of it, that someone who examines movies the way that he and his buddies in the Ministry of Cinema do, they could get the same things out of Star Wars that we do. And we're just a couple of dummies looking at it going, I like lightsabers and Han Solo. And to me, it really spoke to how universal the themes and the entertainment values of the movies really are.
Yeah, it seems like he picks up on the same things that the rest of the audience does. He's just aware of it. It's a lot like, I went to art school, and a lot of the things that I learned there were things that I had already kind of absorbed from doing creative work and design work before I went to school for it. And it was enlightening to actually have it spelled out in a concrete fashion. So where a lot of fans tap into the same things, like the Joseph Campbell stuff and the ring composition and all that, they're not aware of it. It's background noise as far as they're concerned, but it informs how they feel about it. And it's just that Brad and the Ministry of Cinema know why that is and how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, their outlook was really, really, really interesting to me, because I think I'm probably someone that, I wouldn't say they're targeting me with their movie, because obviously I see something about the prequels that sounds like it's defending the prequels, and I'm like, I'm on board, dude. But I think that when they were mentioning their aim for their movie, it works, because for me, even though I love Star Wars, what they were presenting actually made me look at Star Wars in a different way. Mm-hmm. And it was really cool.
Yeah, that was one of his points that we had discussed it off the air. It's a piece I want to write, and I didn't want to interject in the interview to say like, oh, I totally had that opinion, dude. But right. We talked about adding some content to the website in written form. One of the things I was going to write about was how you constantly have to allow your understanding of Star Wars to be flexible, because every new installment shades the previous ones in a different light. And that's what he was saying, with Disney taking over, for example, is that Disney is going to change the way Star Wars stories are told, and you're going to have to kind of go along with it. The same way the prequels, everyone was expecting the vibe of 4, 5, and 6, and that's not what they got, because George Lucas gave them something different to consider instead. And some people have been able to jump on board, like you have, and just accept it all as one stream of consciousness. And other people have said, no, 4, 5, and 6 are the only things that define Star Wars, and anything that doesn't feel like that is outside of my definition.
Yeah, that was one of the things that he brought up that was really kind of thought provoking for me was, well, we hope to change. We hope to change the way people look at the prequels, but more importantly, when he said that our opinions on Star Wars should be ever changing.
Yes.
And that was interesting to me, because I'm thinking, why? I love Star Wars. I'm going to love Star Wars. And my opinion doesn't change. Like if, let's say Episode 8 comes out and it's literally like the most horrid piece of crap ever, it's not going to make me go back and look at the other 7 movies and go, oh, well, you know what? Those actually aren't as good as I thought. I mean, those are already cemented for me. So anything coming forward is a new, it's a new thing. It's something new to consider. It's something new to scrutinize, but it has no bearing on how I see the previous movies. And I wonder how many people, I would say I'm probably a loner in that. I mean, there's a lot of Star Wars fans like me, I would say, that have that outlook. Like, well, I love the first 6, and it's awesome. It's never going to change. But really, you guys are probably right. There's more people that it's a little more fluid, where they'll see Episode 7 and Episode 8 and Rogue One and all these other things, and it may cause them to look at stuff they already enjoy in a different light. And that's interesting to me.
And that's the thing that he brought forth with his documentary that I think bears the most merit is he's saying, I remember the quote specifically because I was, reviewing the interview to make sure we got this part right. Where he said, Empire Strikes Back may be your favorite film of the saga, but if you can open your mind enough to at least consider the point of view that we're presenting in our documentary, then 1, 2, and 3 will increase your enjoyment of 5 by having this perspective on it.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the movie for that reason, because if that's something that's a possibility where, Empire to me, as I've said, episode 3 is my favorite movie of all time, but my favorite Star Wars movie is Empire Strikes Back. If I watch their movie and I come out of it and I go watch Empire again and it's even better for me, that's going to be amazing. And honestly, for them, I couldn't give them any more kudos if I tried. If they can have that effect on people with this film, that's absolutely incredible. If you can take a movie, and actually, I'm not even going to limit this to Empire Strikes Back. If you can take something as iconic as Star Wars and increase people's enjoyment of it by presenting a more cerebral outlook on the whole saga, that is an absolutely fantastic, just amazing achievement.
That's true, and it's really hard to do because as fans of the films, we've seen them how many hundreds of times. I mean, to see a movie that's that familiar in a different light is a hard thing to do. So if he's got a point of view that's going to allow us to view these films again and get more out of them than we already have, because it's actually kind of true. My girlfriend was actually pointing this out the other day. She's like, for as much as you love Star Wars, anytime we're picking a movie to watch, you never pick Star Wars. And I'm like, you know what? You're kind of right. Like, I know those movies so well now, I don't watch them very often. They're so internal to me, I don't need to see them on the screen anymore to feel like I experience them on a regular basis. So to have a reason to go back and watch those with fresh eyes, that's great. I would love to see such a familiar, beloved movie in a brand new way.
Yeah. And I mean, see, I'm not like you. I mean, I watch Star Wars all the time, and because I have them all 7 downloaded to my phone, I mean, when I'm out of town with the band, which is almost every weekend, when I fall asleep, I plug my headphones into the phone. I literally fall asleep listening to one of the movies.
So you're passively getting the quotes like through osmosis.
Oh yeah. I just can't stop watching Star Wars. I love it that much. I mean,
So some people learn a new language that way. You fall asleep and you learn quotes from Star Wars.
Yes, exactly. And yet I just said from a different point of view instead of a certain point of view. So apparently I've learned so much that it's starting to like rub a smooth spot on my brain, and I'm forgetting a couple things because I've seen it so many times.
Yeah, as much as we swear we know these things, every time we play Star Wars Trivial Pursuit, there's always a question that we know is stupid easy, and we're like, wait, C-D-P-O. No.
See, we can't really bring those up because we were so dominant against each other at Star Wars Trivial Pursuit that we had to turn it into a drinking game to kind of dull the senses to try and give one of us an edge. You know what? I was thinking about this the other day. I know this is kind of a sidebar here, but
we never get off topic on this show. Stop it.
I know. We've been talking about doing film commentaries, which we'll have to do at some point. But I was thinking the other day, one of these times we should set the mics up and have like a special bonus episode of one of our matches of Star Wars Trivial Pursuit.
Okay. We've got enough feedback channels. I want to know if the audience actually cares about listening to us play Star Wars Trivial Pursuit.
Well, whether or not they want to listen to it again, it would be a special episode. So it's not like, hey, check out our new episode. We would just promote it as, okay, we played Star Wars Trivial Pursuit and we were drinking while we were doing it. So take it with a grain of salt. This is just in case you want to hear us being total idiots. And some of the stuff that comes out, like our arguments about rules, but also think about like some of the questions like, no, he only said that 4 times, not 5 times. No, dude. Remember in this one scene? No, that doesn't count. And we start arguing about cheese, like who's going to get the cheese and who's not. I mean, some of our arguments are they're pretty aggressive.
No, Qui-Gon had a death gasp. That was his last words.
Exactly. I mean, some of the stuff that comes up
counts as a word.
It has vowels in it, damn it. But I mean, some of the stuff that happens when we play that game might actually make for some interesting entertainment. And if you really think about it, it's not just people listening to us yell at each other. I mean, there is trivia involved.
Will that be our first YouTube episode?
Yeah, probably.
Just turn the cameras on and go.
Right? Set like a GoPro right here in front of your screen, and then just face it to us. And oh, good Lord! Now the only question remaining is: would we use warm
Kamchatka?
Excuse me. Yeah, warm Kamchatka as the penalty shot, because that was definitely a penalty.
That's a penalty no matter what's going on. That has nothing to do with Star Wars.
Your life could be perfect. You do a warm shot of Kamchatka, it just changes everything.
I know we've educated you with the interview in this episode, audience, but let me just give you the one takeaway you absolutely must have from the show, and that is don't drink Kamchatka.
Yes. Drimp.
Yeah.
Drimp. Don't drink warm Kamchatka. That is, yeah.
Or cold.
Yeah. Well, yeah, true. It's like lighter fluid either way, but.
Stay away from liquors with K's in their name in general, like Baltica beer, for example. Baltika. 51 ounces in a plastic bottle with a screw top.
Oh, was that Russian stuff?
Yes.
God, what was that? And it was only a couple bucks, wasn't it?
$3.
Well, okay. Now, if anybody out there who's like one night, like I just feel like getting drunk or I feel like getting buzzed, that's what you go for. It's $3 for basically six, like what, 4 beers worth?
Right. If you have that night where you say, I'm only going to have one beer, that's the beer to
one.
have.
Yeah, right. But yeah,
it gets the job done.
Nice. Yeah, but no, back on topic. It's just the one thing that I took out of the interview was their aim for their documentary to make people think. Just talking to them and hearing their outlook on Star Wars and their opinions made me think. So it actually, I was already excited to watch the film. And I'm not just saying this because we interviewed them like, oh, I'm so excited to watch the film. No, you sent me that trailer and I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'm totally watching this. But after having talked to them, I'm really excited to see it because what they wanted people to get out of it, I got out of it just by talking to them about the film. So I am so interested to see the finished product. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I love that they came at it from the perspective of presenting information and not clubbing you over the head with their opinion.
Yeah. And the one thing, and I kind of agree with Brad on this, he mentioned in the interview, there's a couple references that people might not have gotten. Red Letter Media is one of them. And basically what Red Letter Media is, it's I don't know if it's a company or just one guy, but basically he put out a series of articles that absolutely destroyed the prequels. And they tried, Brad and the Ministry of Cinema, those 3 guys, they tried to get him on their documentary. And as Brad said, it wasn't going to be one of those, well, we just want to interview him so we can, rip on him or argue with him. It's, it's a contrarian point of view on the prequels, and they're presenting all sides of the prequels for their film. And this guy wouldn't even respond. So basically, this guy is such a prequel hater that he wouldn't even respond to someone that could possibly disagree with his outlook.
Yeah, I love that they actually sought out contrarian points of view in their own documentary. I mean, when you have a balanced view like that, then it really is left up to the audience to make up their own mind instead of telling the audience what they should think.
Yeah. I mean, I'm obviously a musician. I'm in a band, and I'm in a very successful cover band. And, we work with some pretty reputable promoters. There's a modicum of professionalism. Is it modicum or modicum?
I think it's modicum.
That's what I thought too. You're always better at the actual pronunciation, but there's a modicum of professionalism that you have to have if you're putting a product out in public. And one of them is, to use the band example, if a promoter is a complete piece of garbage to you and he hits you up and says, well, I want to book your band, you don't ignore him, and you don't fire back and say, well, F you. You just politely say, oh, no, I'm sorry, but we're booked, or, you're polite and you're professional. For this Red Letter Media guy to not even respond, that's like giving them the finger. And and that's unprofessional, because basically what that says is he doesn't want anything to do with their film, because in his opinion, it's a film that's going to try and support the prequels. And because he hates them so much, he refuses to even acknowledge the other side.
It is,
and that's weak.
He might be afraid of their case undermining his opinion, which makes him look weaker, I guess. I don't know.
Well, then, hey.
But we're still just guessing. We're still just guessing.
No.
But what I will say, if we're on the topic of professionalism, I do have to toss out a special thank you once again to Brad and Kyle for coming on the show, because let's face it, our show is just finding its footing. We're still trying to build our audience.
Yeah.
They could have easily looked at us and said, no way. We don't care that you guys want to talk to us. You're way too small for us to bother with.
Right.
But, you know, we sent them a professional request. They were professional enough to respond, and we found out that we have the same mindset, and hopefully we can do something to spread the word about their documentary.
Yeah, that was, and to, you know, pull back the curtain a little bit, because of our numbers and whatnot. I mean, we admittedly have, we've sent out a lot of interview requests via Twitter and stuff like that. One of them, actually, I'm going to throw a nugget out here. If this ever comes to fruition, we might have.
Oh, don't go there, dude. Come on.
Just wait. I'm not going to give it away. Trust me here. Come on. Again, professionalism. I know what I'm doing somewhat. We threw a nugget out a couple days ago that if it ever comes to fruition is not just big for us, but it's monstrous in the Star Wars community.
You'll know when we get it, if we get it.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. But anyway, because of the size of the show, we've reached out to a bunch of people asking, would they be able to come on the show and talk to us a little bit, and haven't gotten anything. And when I found out about this documentary one night about a week ago, I was just thinking, hey, what if I just hit this guy up? Like, we'll see what happens. Because I've never done it. You and Steve always are the guys that are like, oh, I hit up this guy. I've never done it. So I looked up, I've watched the trailer several times for, the film, Prequel Strike Back. And then I looked up, the director on Twitter, and I hit him up and said, hey, would you be open to coming on, my Star Wars show? I said which we talked about in the last episode, but
it's mine too.
But what I did not do was tweet it at him from the Nerfherder Council Twitter page. I did it from my personal page. Because in my mind, I went, I wonder if people get these messages and then look up the show and go, oh, look at those numbers. They're new. I'm not going on there. It doesn't benefit me. So I kind of hedged my bet by doing it from my personal page. And then he responded. And then we got a dialogue going about it. And then the publicist hit me up, and away we go. But then it was funny. Like
that was basically the reputational equivalent of money laundering.
Yes, that's exactly what I did. I hedged my bets. I will fully admit to it. And finally, I think it was the night before, actually, we did the interview. The publicist comes back and says, what's the name of the podcast again? And I went, crap. So I sent it back to him, and I said, here's our website, and here's our show, and I said, and I was honest. I said, we're new, we don't have a lot of listens, but if you look at the numbers, they're going up, and, we're a very different kind of show. I explained what we try to do, so that way, if he accepted it, he knew what, the guys potentially were getting into. And he came right back and he said,
you went on for like 4 paragraphs trying to justify why it was worth coming on the show.
I did. I did. I was so nervous about, like, man, they're going to see this and they're going to be like, what the hell? We're not doing that.
You were like the geeky kid in high school trying to ask out the cheerleader to the prom.
That's exactly what it was. It was my high school days coming back, because I was that kid. But yeah, and I was all nervous about it. And then finally,
you know what it is? He listened to David Prowse and the Jizz Whalers, and then he knew that we were his kind of show.
Honestly, if the David Prowse stuff was what got him to accept the interview for his clients, then he was disappointed in our interview, because there was nothing near the David Prowse stuff in there. But
I thought these guys were going to be funny.
Yeah, this is not funny at all. Why is this so serious? But yeah, anyways, like, to close the story out, like, he responded right back and said, cool, all right, well, let's do it at this time. And I was like, holy crap. All right. We got an interview. But I was nervous the whole time it was going to get canned.
It's like the Mitch Hedberg joke. If you guys want to talk to me after the show, I'll be fucking surprised.
Exactly. But, you know, it is our first, we've taken our first step into a larger world. So,
I guess we got to give a little shout out back to Blabba the Hutt again. Just have persistence. Tweet at anybody. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Someone will say yes eventually. It's the Gene Simmons philosophy.
Yes. Jamie and Kate set us on the right path for sure. And by the way, can I say, I really hope, I'm sure Kate's going to Celebration next April.
Is this a new hope?
It might be. Obviously, I'm sure Kate will be at Celebration next April. It'd be awesome if Jamie was there too.
Wouldn't that be fabulous?
Because if we apply to broadcast at Celebration and get accepted, if they're there, they
Special
have
guests.
to be a part of it.
Yeah, special
They have
guests.
to be a part of it. And that would be absolutely awesome. Because, I mean, let's face it. I mean, honestly, and I think you might agree with this, our numbers have gone up, and they really started to go up after we had Blabba on the show. When we were using their show name and the tweets and everything like that, because they were, you know, a part of our program, that's when the numbers started to go up. So we really owe them a lot.
Yeah, what a surprise. You know, we started this podcast to become a part of the Star Wars community because we love it so much. And it turns out when you talk to the rest of the community, good things happen.
Wow. I can't believe
Wow, yeah.
We're such idiots, man.
Wait, so if you go online and talk to people, then they listen to you.
We came up with this idea for the...
Can we get a millennial on this show? Because clearly we're too old to get it.
Yeah, right. Dude, we came up with the idea for this show at Celebration last year, and then we're like, we're a couple of morons. We can talk Star Wars. And I'm proud to say that at every turn, basically what this has become is we're a couple of morons who just talk Star Wars. And unfortunately, we roped poor Steve into it. So he's in with our stupidity, and he's losing sleep. He's getting nothing out of this.
Right.
So... anyways, we want to thank Brad and Kyle again for coming on and doing an interview with us. We went a little over time, and they were very, very gracious and kept talking to us. And it was a great time. And it was our second interview ever, if you want to consider it an actual, like... Well, do we consider the interview with Blabba our first interview, or is that a peer-to-peer?
Boy, I don't know if that's an interview because that was just a conversation. At least we actually had a delineated starting point for the interview with Brad. Blabba was meant to be, and we just got BSing right from the get-go, and I just kind of hit record at some point.
Right? All right, so this is either our second or first interview, depending on how you're looking at it. But again, we have to thank Brad and Kyle for coming on. It was a really, really fascinating discussion. It adds, I think it adds a lot of depth to our show in general because, you know, we're an opinion-based podcast and it's just the three of us talking about our opinions. But this really brings a cerebral, as I used the word before, a cerebral outlook to the movies that we love so much that are the reason why we're doing this podcast. So got to thank them for spending some time and coming on with us. Got to thank everybody for listening. Thanks to Steve for being cool enough to not have to force a scheduling change because he couldn't make the interview. And it's been a blast. This has been a really fun episode. It's really cool. This is something very different for us, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know, AJ, as you and I have talked about, I enjoyed it. I'm sure you did.
Yes, we've talked about how much you enjoyed it.
Yes. Well, it was fun, man. I've never gotten to do anything like this before. I mean, I've interviewed rock stars and stuff, so that's fun, but it was for other people's shows. I've never done it for my own show. I'm like, wow. You know, it's like I'm interviewing a movie director. Like, holy crap. It was cool.
I had a blast too, and I got to say a personal thank you again for coming on the show to Brad and Kyle because, like, I keep bringing up opinions and ideas for the show, and it's typically a little bit too, like, I spend too much time thinking about it to where it gets to be too smart and it's not that fun to listen to. So I'm glad that we had somebody who could articulate it better than I could to actually make the audience listen a little bit and maybe think as well.
Right. Hey, maybe after this episode, once we start talking about episode 1 on future episodes, we'll get more numbers instead of people turning it off immediately.
Boy, I still, you know, hey, there's a feedback opportunity right there. Could someone please tweet at us at NHC Podcast and just let us know exactly, especially if you're someone who usually listens and didn't listen to the episode about 1 versus 4 compared to 4 versus 7, because that thing is like, I think last time I checked our numbers, it's like 1/3 the listenership of any other episode. like just mentioning the Phantom Menace is such a death knell for an episode that we basically got to just shut up about it.
Right? Well, I mean, our last few episodes have had well over 100 listens immediately, and that one had like 40.
Yeah, I think it has yet to crack the 50 listen mark.
And who knows? Maybe having Brad and Kyle on actually will change that. So next time we talk about episode 1, it'll explode like the rest of ours, because people will be like, I really enjoyed that interview, and I rented their movie or bought it, and I really enjoyed their outlook, and now I'm going to listen to the Nerfherder Council talk about episode 1.
And then never again, because they'll listen to our show and be like, oh. Oh.
Right.
What is this?
Yep. All right, so we're going to get out of here. Again, want to thank everybody for listening. The numbers are going up, as I've said, every episode, but they really are, and we really appreciate it because we love talking about Star Wars, and it's cool to see other people apparently enjoying what we have to say. Don't forget, we do have our hotline, 440-987-WARS, which is 9277. You can find us at NHC Podcast. That's our Twitter page. We do have our Facebook page. And we are on Spreaker, which is probably our main outlet for that. You know, Podbean, iTunes, these other things. And
special shout out for our website, because finally we are deciding to maybe type a little bit instead of just talk all the time. So there will be posts going up between episodes for you to read and comment on, share with your friends, print out, line the bottom of your birdcage, all those things.
Right? I forgot to mention that. Yeah, so we're going to have blogs. I'm actually considering doing some little mini podcast audio things of my own. So,
you too?
Yeah, we will see what happens. I just want to throw some stuff up there if I occasionally have a thought. Just anything to get, people thinking about Star Wars, talking about Star Wars. It's what I love the most, besides music and the Cleveland sports scene.
So basically you had the same idea I did, which is, hey, I don't want to wait until 2 weeks from now to talk more Star Wars. So I'm just going to put out shorter episodes by myself.
That's exactly it. That is exactly it, but also in my case, I can't keep my mouth shut. So if I put a microphone in front of it, I might actually get some usage out of it. So, but anyways, thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for listening. I'm JT at Dog Pound Jedi. He's AJ
at Drake Adams 579,
and somewhere out there is Steve at JSteve1005. See how I did that? Made you do the other half, so we did it for him. Okay. And we will catch you next time. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
This bucket of bolts is never gonna get us past that blockade.
This bucket's got a few surprises left in her. Plus, me and Chewie are on it. Ain't that right, Chewie?
Hell yeah, you my nerf herder.
You my nerf herder.
There's an outtake for you. Me pretending to be drunk. You doing the thing. Alrighty.
Sounds like steam escaping.
It sounds like steam escaping. Throw out your hands. Stick up your fish.
Hands on your hips. Give them a push. You'll be surprised you're doing the French mistake. Voila!
Roll!